Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. 2022 NFL season is officially about to start. No more preseason. The next NFL game will be an official 2021 season game. This is the first time we've had more than one person really on a video for a long time, especially three. Kean McDermott, Charlie Nidell, Dylan Shalom, all the Sports Hoop analysts, the analysts of the future. That's what I'm putting on our merch. So today, as you saw by the title, we are doing our 2021-2022 preseason power rankings. We're going through all 32 NFL teams, breaking it down. Each of us will be going, bang, 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 all the way up to number one, starting at 32, obviously, because we want you to watch the full video. And speaking of that, do make sure to watch full video so you can see who we have at one. Yeah, who wins. But it's kind of a combined-ish list. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Subscribe, all that stuff. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Starting with number 32, I think this one is not really debatable, for at least in my mind. It was not debatable. I don't know who their quarterback is going to be going into the first week. It really just depends. And if you haven't guessed already, it's the Houston Texans. The whole Deshaun Watson situation just throws them under a massive bus. And we just don't know what's happening with the Houston organization in general. I think even aside from Deshaun Watson, they'd still be pretty low on my list. But number 32, there's not much to say about them. Not a very good team all around. It's the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I think we can all agree there, Dylan. I think that's.
I actually don't think they're the worst team in the league, but I think it's completely reasonable.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are them, depending on roster wise. Yeah.
And at 31, and this is a team that I have had nothing but good things to say about, but a consensus agreement has been made. I'm not going to argue it. They don't have a great roster. I love the coach. If you guys know the channel, you know me. This is the Detroit Lions. And I think Goff gets a little bit extra hate just because that team didn't beat the Patriots. But that being said, he's obviously not the right successor for Matt Stafford. The team is not ready to challenge for any sort of playoffs. I like the coach. I like the draft they had, but it isn't enough to win them enough games. So 31, honestly, I don't agree with it, but it's reasonable.
And it definitely doesn't help that Penei Sewell did not look good in preseason.
Preseason's preseason, though.
Yeah, it is, to be fair. But again, preseason's preseason. Offensive lineman, that's worse because now he'll be going against actual NFL talent. So you take it how you will. But moving on to number 30, we have, again, arguably the worst team in the league roster-wise. I would definitely argue they could be, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, as a Giants fan, I love saying that. But, not great. I would say Jalen Hurts, again, I think Dylan agrees with me. I'm not sure how Charlie feels. I love Jalen Hurts again. I think give him a chance. I think he showed flashes. Obviously, his stat line was not fantastic last year. Bring in Minshew and Flacco. He has two quarterbacks who are arguably QB1s and can lead teams, and Flacco is certainly someone who can at least lead a poor Eagles team to a couple wins. You have Devontae Smith, who looked fantastic. People are saying he's the mini Megatron. Look, it's not a great Eagles team. Unfortunately, I'd say 4 wins is their max. We did a preview on them. Make sure you go check that out. Not great. Again, 30 I think is good, and I think they're obviously lucky. It may be in some people's mind that they're not 32.
Yeah, you were saying about Jalen Hurts. I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he's the Eagles quarterback for the future. But if we're going to move on to number 29, that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's another weaker team. Obviously, they're a bottom 4 team in the league in our power rankings. And I think that the Travis Etienne injury, it's a setback, but I don't think it's a major one. In some ways, I think it might even be better for this team because right now I prefer the way that James Robinson played last season. I think that there were for some reason, a lot of doubts about Robinson this year, and that's why they went out and drafted Etienne, and he was slated to be their RB1 to start the season, I think. And I think James Robinson is better suited for that RB1 role, but all around, Trevor Lawrence does not have a lot of help offensively. He's played well in preseason, but when you get to the receiving core, it's just not very deep. Defensively as well, the secondary is not great. The defensive line is not great. Maybe the only good player on that defense is Miles Jack, who is a standout, but it's just not a very good team all around for the Jaguars this year. Well, it is an improvement from last year.
And speaking of improvements from last year, we've got the New York Jets at our 28th spot. And that's all it is. It's an improvement from last year. It's not a great roster. It's Zach Wilson is going to have to really step up in order for this team to make some sort of a mark. Otherwise, they'll have like the 7th overall pick, which is just not ideal. And their division's too tough for them to get a lot of wins out of. Obviously a heartbreaking injury to Carl Lawson, and they've had to replace him with another Lawson who's just significantly worse. And
the Lawson we consistently mistake Carl Lawson as.
Yeah. And I just can't see any way that they're going to run the football offensively with a weak interior line and a very, very weak running back core. So personally, that offense will not thrive unless Zach Wilson is an absolute monster. So I don't think this team's going to do very well.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm a Giants fan. Prayers up to that entire organization. It was like, oh my God, we might actually be good. And then they literally got decimated. It was like the 49ers defense last year. Like their whole defensive line, I believe Curry's now out for this season. Lawson's out. A ton of people are out. Unfortunate. And Jared Davis is out.
Yeah.
But moving on again to improvements and a loss, but me and Dylan think an overrated loss. The Atlanta Falcons, who lost Julio Jones. Again, me and Dylan are saying he will not be as good for the Titans as people think he will be. Again, we'll get to that when we talk about the Titans. But look, Calvin Ridley, who I think all three of us can agree is a fantastic receiver, will be one of the best, if not already one of the best. I think already one of the best in the league, but can break into that top 5 this year. Kyle Pitts, again, people have had his kind of doubts. And again, as we've said, I hate to turn to fantasy, but a guy who can break out as an incredible fantasy tight end and one in real life. This is where I think this part of the list, we kind of turn around, because I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints don't play well, if this Falcons is a sneaky wild card team, because they have that potential offensively. Again, the defense has been a question mark and is arguably the worst defense in the league. But they've made improvements here and there. I love Kyle Pitts. Matt Ryan, I think, has been able to score points. You put an offensive coach into a team that has a fantastic offense, I think it'll be good. Improvements on the offensive line. You have a good a defensive line that's good. I would say besides that, the defense isn't fantastic. But again, I think it's a team that could get 7, 8, arguably, again, if a fit really good season, 9. But then their floor, as always, with that defense is, 4, 5, 6. But again, a good Falcons team. I wouldn't be surprised, as I said, they make wild card. It's kind of a up in the air division besides the Buccaneers for that second spot. So I think the Falcons kind of have it out for them this season.
Moving on now to 26, I think we could see a quarterback battle. We could see the quarterback role change over between Drew Lock and decided. Teddy Bridgewater. I think as of now, it is decided. But I think the Broncos, I don't know whether or not to call this an improvement from last season, because they have added Javonte Williams at running back. But I feel like there's just not enough offensive firepower. I think that they have the players, obviously, with Bridgewater, with Javonte Williams, who could be a standout rookie this season. I know, Kean, you were super high on Javonte Williams in the draft. Courtland Sutton, I think, is good enough as a wide receiver 1 for as poor of a team as Denver. And defensively, with Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Justin Simmons, I mean, we've got
Surtain,
Patrick Surtain, of course.
Kyle Fuller.
It's a good team. Roster-wise, it looks like a better team than they actually perform. I think that the Broncos, we've seen the past few seasons, that they just haven't... They've lacked, maybe it's because of injuries, but they've lacked enough, again, firepower to win them games. And that's why they haven't really moved up that much this season. And I think 26 is a fair spot for them.
Yeah, just touching on that a little bit more before I get to the next team. If you watched our Vikings video, you saw me ragging a bit on Mike Zimmer, and I'm in the same exact boat with Vic Fangio. I don't believe he's ready to manage players at this sort of level. I never thought he was. So that being said, moving on to a team that I've actually slated as the sleeper team in the National Football Conference. It is... I don't know if that's what it stands for. I just went with it. But it's the Carolina Panthers. I think their roster is perfectly set for them to make a playoff run, but Sam Darnold is their quarterback. That's the one thing that they are missing, and that is why everyone was slating a Deshaun Watson trade, and everyone thinks it's such a great idea, but obviously you just can't do that at this point. But I think just overall the defense is just a little bit above average, and the offense, barring Sam Darnold, is a little bit above average. So if Sam Darnold is able to show some of that promise that he did in his first season in the NFL and all throughout college, then I would not be surprised at all if this team makes even wins a playoff game. Wow.
Didn't hear that. Again, I will address that. Sam Darnold is their quarterback, and not a lot of people were talking about that. But yeah, I mean, again, it was a Panthers team that was really bad last year and played very well. But moving on now to the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, I think another team that made improvements, but did they make the right choices? I think the big story going into the season is what is happening with Jamar Chase. Some charges I believe has gone against him due to sexual allegations. I'm not sure. Again, we'll touch on that. And then his hands have looked awful. I mean, he lost them in preseason. He couldn't catch. And for someone of Jamar Chase, where he passed up on arguably the best offensive lineman we've ever seen, yes, that's not good if he cannot catch the ball. Again, I'm sure that will change, but, playing against backups in preseason, not being able to catch it isn't going to be good if you can't do that against starters, or at least it'll be harder. Joe Burrow, I think, is a great quarterback. I think coming back, obviously something that hasn't been talked about again is what's the success for him coming back, because he had that awful injury. The defense has improved. You obviously bring in Hendrickson, who I have talked about over and over again, is why wouldn't you just re-sign Carl Lawson? But now, obviously that seems to be going a different direction. Again, Bengals, I think a team that could upset in their division. I think they could be a game that we see them beat the Steelers once, they beat the Browns once, beat the Ravens once. I think they're a improved organization with a good coach and a good quarterback.
Yeah, if we move on to 23, I may have some extra optimism with this one because I am a Giants fan, but at 23, we've got the New York Giants. And I think that roster-wise, it's a really, really solid roster until you look at the most important position on the field, and that's quarterback. I think the help around Daniel Jones is pretty incredible with Saquon Barkley at running back. When he's healthy, he's the most explosive running back in the league. The receiving core is deep. Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, just the headliners for that. We've seen Evan Ingram play well. We've seen Evan Ingram play really, really poorly. The offensive line has a little bit of a new look. Defensively, I think it's one of the more underrated defenses in the league. Leonard Williams, Blake Martinez at linebacker. Obviously James Bradbury. Good safety core, good secondary in general, but I think that none of that matters if Daniel Jones can't step up. And that's where I think the Giants could be by the end of the season. They could be a top 15 in the power rankings, or they could be a bottom 5 in the power rankings. It really just depends on how Daniel Jones plays. He's boom or bust. So we got to put him somewhere in the middle. 23 for the Giants is a fair ranking.
At 22, we've got Justin Fields' or Andy Dalton's Chicago Bears.
Andy Dalton's Chicago Bears for week 1 and 2 quarters.
Yeah. But we're in the same boat again with coaching, and I don't see Matt Nagy staying till the end of next season. This team has too tough of a schedule to win a bunch of games and don't have a good enough offense to win a bunch of games. So it's really flat out. Their roster is mediocre at best. Their coach is below average. They have the toughest schedule in the league, them and the Steelers. They're not going to win a lot of games. It's very simple. They're not terrible, but they're not going to get anywhere near the playoffs.
Moving on to 21, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, a team that is very much bust or boom. You could see them being below a lot of these teams that we listed before. Again, going into a division that will be dominated for a long time by the Chiefs. I think they're just waiting until next year when they can hopefully get Devontae Adams. Derek Carr, while he is an underrated quarterback, he's not a guy who's going to lead you very far in the playoffs, let alone in the regular season. Josh Jacobs, again, I've talked about my concerns with him. Again, in fantasy, I don't know why I keep coming back to that, but someone in fantasy who I don't like him that much, and he kind of seems to play very well in the beginning of the season, and in the back end just doesn't really perform very well. It's an offensive line that surprisingly Alex Leatherwood was playing fantastic in preseason, playing like the number 1 offensive lineman in the draft. And it's a defense that, again, just like the Falcons, is a question mark. It's not very good. It lets up a ton of points. It cannot defend the run very well, and they didn't seem to address that in any kind of big way in the offseason. Bringing in, obviously, Yannick Ngakoue is an improvement, but in terms of transforming a defense, it's not going to do much. So the Raiders, again, I don't see them making the playoffs. I see them getting 3rd in their division, especially with the Chargers, making that increase and obviously having Justin Herbert there. But I don't see, first of all, Carr, not great. And the coach, I don't like that much either.
Now to the top 20, we've cleared the worst 12 teams in the league to top 20. We started with the Minnesota Vikings. And I think that the Vikings have also a good offensive roster. Kirk Cousins is not the best at quarterback, but he gets the job done with receivers like Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. And it's a decently run-heavy offense with Dalvin Cook. and he's used to set up the pass game. And I think Dalvin Cook is one of the best rushers in the league, and the pair of Thielen and Jefferson is one of the best receiving duos in the league, if not the best, it could be argued. And I think that the Vikings are a little bit set up for failure here. I think that they're a little bit overhyped with that stacked offense. I think they've got a tough schedule this year.
Yep.
And they could easily drop the first 4 games. They've got Bengals, Cardinals, Seahawks, Browns. That's a tough first 4 games. And to lose even 3 of the first 4 is just demoralizing for a team with such high hopes. And I think that the Vikings are going to have to, they shouldn't lose, and if they can fix that, they can be a playoff team, but for now they're just not in the race.
And speaking of that, Irv Smith is out for the season with his meniscus surgery.
It's bad.
Well, they got Chris Herndon. All right.
On to the next pick, and I don't really particularly agree with this. It's the New England Patriots. I think what has happened in this organization for the past year and a half, ever since Tom Brady left, is a complete dumpster fire. They won a bunch of games last season, but that's pretty much just Belichick doing his magic. I don't like Mac Jones in particular. Half their defense held out last year, which everyone thinks is a really good thing for them to move on with. But I actually think it's bad because those guys have not had quality reps for a good year now, and the offense has so little firepower. Trading for 2 tight ends doesn't do really that much to help me, or signing 2 tight ends in free agency doesn't really do that much to help them as in terms of receiving upside, because Mac Jones is not Cam Newton. So that being said, we're going to move on.
Yeah. All right. Moving on now to number 18. And we have the New Orleans Saints. Look, again, another boom or bust team, especially with Jameis Winston at the helm. You're looking at the Michael Thomas situation, which really we're going to, I guess, find out at the end of the season. You have a good defense, an offensive line that we know is top 3, top 5, and obviously Kamara, who is just a fantastic running back. A very good coach. Sean Payton is someone who is very hard to game plan against. I would say he's one of the more underrated coaches in the NFL. And I very, very much like the Saints going to this season. And I think Jameis Winston will be able to, kind of claw his way to a average to above average quarterback.
Moving on to number 17, Dylan, there's a reason we're not letting you talk on this one. It might go on too long, but the Miami Dolphins, I think that they've made their offensive changes. They can call it a second rookie season for Tua. They can restart. And I think Tua could play well, but I think that, unfortunately for the Dolphins, a lot of the burden this season is going to, again, fall on Xavier Howard and the defense. I think they just don't have enough weapons offensively to really get the job in an offensive battle, get the job done in an offensive battle, and it's going to more rely on the defense holding the oppositions to low numbers. And I think they were able to do it last season. I don't see why they can't do it again this season.
Yeah, we don't have enough time in this video for me to really talk about this more. So if you want to hear my opinion, just DM me, Dylan_Shalom. Moving on to another dumpster fire of an offseason, we've got the Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz was a quality pickup on their end. Unfortunately, he is going to be injured for a lot of this season, and they are really, he's struggling.
Back week 1.
Is he really?
Yep.
All right, well, he'll get injured in week 2. So
yep, most likely.
So let's just roll with the fact that they're not going to do very well just based on a lot of injuries in preseason. And I don't like that they are not addressing their main concern, which is really a lack of receiver depth. They haven't mentioned anything in terms of drafting a receiver or picking up anyone. So they're going to have a lot of trouble giving Carson Wentz or a younger quarterback like Jacob Eason a weapon. So moving on.
All right, moving on now. Very, very happy very, very happy this team landed. To me, Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert, I love. Eckler is back and healthy. That defense has made improvements. Obviously, Asante Samuel looks good. An offensive line that brings in Slater and really protects the blind side of Justin Herbert. And obviously receivers in Keenan Allen, who I absolutely love, one of my favorite receivers in the league. I think up there with one of the best route runners. And obviously you lose Hunter Henry, you bring in Jared Cook, who has kind of that ability in the red zone. And I guess they won't miss Hunter Henry as much with him there. A great team, playoff potential, double-digit win potential, especially with Herbert there and a good coach, or a coach we hoping are good.
Yeah, I think that we're going to move on now to number 14. That's the Washington football team. I think for them, it was a strange quarterback job because we saw Tyler Heineke play really well in the in the playoffs last season, but they brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is going to be the starter week 1, and I think it's not a bad move, and I think they could challenge the Cowboys for a division title, but I think that they're going to, again, be a team that needs to rely on their defense because Fitzpatrick's not going to get the job done as well as they like at quarterback. And with that defensive line, I think the defense can get it done.
And moving on to the next team, also an NFC team, that is the Arizona Cardinals. And Kyler Murray breakout season incoming. I really like everything that they've done to help him out. I didn't like what they did in the draft, but other than that, I liked that they brought in a veteran, AJ Green. I like that they have definitely reassured him with more, I want to say, experienced offensive line. And I like their weapons.
All right, Pittsburgh Steelers, I think too high. Again,
I think too
consensus list, but Pittsburgh Steelers, I think with Tomlin at the helm, I guess the way I'll say it is he doesn't really have a losing record very much. In our preseason or in our Buster Boom video, I talked about how it's very annoying we can't say 500 because I think that would be perfect for them. But 8-9, 9-8, I would say around there is what I would give the Steelers. I think again that defense is very good, and Najee Harris I think can be a very much a workhorse back for them.
Moving on to number 11, we've got the Dallas Cowboys, and I think that the real advantage that the Cowboys have in attempting to win the NFC East this season is that Dak Prescott is hands down the best quarterback in the division, and it's not even close. And I think that's the real advantage that they have over all the other teams in the NFC East. Defensively, they're not the best of the 4, but they're the only team I would rely on in the NFC East to get in a shootout and win it. We've seen what Dak Prescott can do. He can throw for 500-plus yards. So I think that the Cowboys have that division, but still not even a top 10 team.
Yeah, moving on, starting up the top 10. I think they're overrated. I think their squad is done, but I can't tell you that based on last season because of the COVID-ridden, injury-ridden season. San Francisco 49ers, Garoppolo or Trey Lance, we really don't know what's going to happen halfway into the season. They could be very, very good. They could be a disaster. We can only really wait and see. It's a consensus list. I think they're too high, but 10 is where the Niners are.
Tennessee Titans at 9. Again, Julio Jones going to them is overrated. The best receiving core ever is absolutely crazy. It is not even the best receiving core in the NFL. But yeah, again, I love AJ Brown. I love Derrick Henry. I think it's an offensive line that got Dylan Redunds and improved that. Obviously, you have Luan and Tannehill again, who isn't where PFF should have put him. He isn't that good, but he is a top 10 guy. I think he's 10. So again, deserving of 9. The Titans defense, another question mark defense with a very good offense. Very, very much. We've seen that in the NFL. But again, a good team. Top 10, I would say, no doubt.
Yeah. Number 8, the Seattle Seahawks. This is a very good division, and they will have a very hard time. But I think that with Russell Wilson at the helm, they're going to be good no matter what. Their inconsistency, Russell Wilson likes to make it a close game, but they prevail with that receiving core, Metcalf and Lockett. I think Chris Carson at running back, it's a good offense. Defense, again, a little bit more of a question mark, but their offense is good.
And right above them, for lack of more to say, they brought in Stafford. They have a top 3, if not the best defense in the league, and a top 3, if not best coach in the league. The Los Angeles Rams are my favorite to win the NFC and make it to the Super Bowl. There's not really much more to say.
Love it there. Quick, short and sweet. Sorry. All right, Baltimore Ravens. Dylan's favorite player in the league that's not even on his team. That's Lamar Jackson, the running back. Look, it's a Ravens team
quarterback.
Quarterback. It's a Ravens team that, again, I think is very good. Lamar Jackson leads his fantastic team, a good coach in Harbaugh, and a defense that can very, very much back the offense. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Key McDermott, Charlie Nidell, and Dylan Shalom Suraj Kadali as well as on the channel, but he'll be here sometime. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.